Well, welcome everyone to day three of the 18th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Ailes, I'm your moderator. And don't forget our sponsor this year, the Journal of Educators Online, JEO. And the web address is thejeo.com. It's a referee journal, has some excellent articles in it, and bound to find something of interest. We have with us Maria Glusman. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, good. She is an instructional designer at Brooklyn College, part of the City University of New York. She supports faculty, staff, and students through LMS training, digital pedagogy, course design, and professional development on teaching and learning with AI. She's had 25 years experience as a college educator and applies design thinking to development and teaching of philosophy courses. Maria is going to talk about hack your courses with AI. Sounds like fun. So Maria, let me turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Bob. I'm very happy and excited to be here and to share with you what I've learned and maybe hear some feedback and continue to improving my craft. So today I'm going to be talking about different ways, different practical methods that we can use to improve our courses. And generally, this applies to online courses, but other courses also need quality improvements, and a lot of these tips can be applied to all other modalities as well. So when we're talking about course quality, there are several different metrics that folks usually use to assess courses for quality, especially when it comes to online courses. So the two big ones that stand out are something called the Oscar rubric. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with this. This is something that's free and it was developed in concert with the State University of New York and OLS. It's free to use. It's a framework that includes about 50 standards, and they're organized in different categories. And the way that they work, it really depends on how you prioritize the different areas of courses that you need to improve. Different institutions will use different methodologies, and it's very customizable. So you could, pick and choose how you group your standards, how you prioritize them, and also how you apply them to course assessment and course improvement. Another one, and I think this is the one that probably people are more familiar with, is Quality Matters. And I know a lot of universities do use Quality Matters, and it's a comprehensive framework that has its own, different standards and metrics and different tools that they develop that could be applied to different disciplines and different modalities. But the focus is predominantly on online courses, both synchronous and asynchronous. So at the City University of New York, we mostly use the Oscar rubric, and I think you probably guessed why, not because it's New York, but because it's free. And it's also very easy and very flexible. So most of the time that I make references to course quality, I would be referencing something that probably can be found in the current iteration of the Oscar. So when we want to improve our courses, and this is true for both instructional designers like myself and faculty developers, there's usually a slew of problems and obstacles that we face. And there are many different kinds of obstacles. So I think they could be roughly grouped into several different categories. So, for example, some of the obstacles that I have personally faced is that, as a faculty member, is that At CUNY, we don't, especially at my campus of CUNY, we don't really have the infrastructure to help all of the faculty members um, use the latest and greatest technology to improve their courses. We don't have the facilities, we don't have the training, we don't have the staff, we're very short staffed, and we also don't have the money to invest in a lot of these different tools. So that's one of the greatest obstacles that I have personally faced as a faculty member. And as an instructional designer, that's one of the things that I try to address in my practice when I work with our faculty, try to find ways to address and resolve some of these obstacles that they're facing, if those obstacles are specifically access to technology, infrastructure, support. So I have a little QR code here, but also I think that I can share a link to this because I know not everyone is able to use a QR code. And what I would just like to know is what your experience has been with wanting to improve your courses, and what are the obstacles, excuse me, that you have faced in trying to improve your own courses. So I have also shared a link to this. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to adjust my camera as I go along because I'm working on two different screens. So, another obstacle that I have dealt with in my practice as an instructional designer is um, lack of time. And I think for most faculty, that's probably going to be the number one thing that they rate as, the most annoying and the most difficult obstacle to overcome because faculty is stretched very thin, right? Every semester, there's more and more hoops to jump through, more and more administrative work to do. Now you also have to contend with a lot of different technologies, and then you have to, police academic integrity of your students. So it's just a lot, right? And to have, just one more thing to do, well, that sometimes becomes impossible. So this entire presentation kind of arose out of, finding ways to help faculty still improve certain areas of their courses without feeling like this is something that's going to break their back. So I just want to take a quick peek at the responses, if anyone has been able to share responses. And we do have a few of them coming in right now. And we also have folks sharing in chat, and that's great. And actually, if it's okay with you, Bob, could we have folks unmute and share some of their frustrations with this? I see not enough time coming up as the number one obstacle. Anyone else, or maybe it's something that I didn't mention that's maybe preventing you or holding you back from, creating truly wonderful, engaging, comprehensive courses? Just reshare the link one more time. So, what is the solution to this? The solution that I have been able to come up with is, we call it the magic wand now. Everyone in my, um, in my department and folks who know me, they also use this term as well, the magic wand. So it's AI, obviously, right? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about AI. So if you do have a magic wand, right, why wouldn't you use it? And the really great thing about this magic wand is that it's super flexible and you can use it to, in any situation you want. You can rely on it more or you can rely on it less, depending on your comfort level. So that's what we're going to talk about, how to use this magic wand effectively, because, we don't want to be like Mickey. You remember Fantasia? And, he finally gets access to the magic wand and he doesn't know how to use it properly. He uses it irresponsibly and he creates a bigger mess than he started with. So we want to be the wizard, right? The sorcerer, not Mickey Mouse. So, in terms of improving courses, I sort of like roughly grouped them into areas of course improvement. So, one area of course improvement is course design, and some of the ways that you could impact the quality of the course greatly is by tackling certain elements having to do with course design. For example, you can strengthen the alignment between your learning outcomes for the course and um, the the assessments and the content that you have in the course. You could streamline the course structure, make the course more comprehensive. You could enhance the accessibility of the different materials that you have in your course. So these are just some of the things that you can do to improve course quality. And the things that I have identified here are things that can create a huge impact on your course quality, but they're kind of low lifts. So let's see. Another area that you can improve is through instruction. And one of the ways you can do that is either by finding ways to scaffold essential skills, and you can scaffold those skills very nicely in different assessments themselves. So you could build assessments in such a way that they include and they allow students to practice and refine certain essential skills, right? And you could chunk up your assessments in such a way as you create, stepping stone for your students to build up their competency until they could actually perform at a much higher level. Another way to improve your instruction is to choose certain learning experiences to gamify. I'm sure folks have heard this term before. Um, you know, um, get that dopamine going for your students. You could also improve your course quality by tackling assessment. You can create a comprehensive assessment plan that emphasizes regular and continuous assessment rather than having, haphazard or periodic assessment. And obviously, using AI can help you do that fairly easily. You can also switch focus a little bit from assessing the product, right, the final results that your students produce, to the process of completing assessments. So, for example, focus on writing skills and improving, their writing or improving their research skills, rather than, just looking at that final term paper or looking at that final project. So there are ways in which you could retool your assignments to emphasize the process and to assess the process. You can improve interaction. And one of the ways we could improve interaction is by creating more opportunities for social learning. And there's ways that we can use AI both to help us create those opportunities, but you can actually also use AI to allow students to collaborate. So you can create a collaborative environment using AI. And of course, you can improve your courses by including elements of career readiness or career competency or career skills. And there's many different ways in which we can do that. You could identify certain core skills and figure out a way to embed them into the various learning experiences and or assessments in your course. And once again, you can use AI to do this well and to do it strategically. So now that we have talked about these different areas of course improvement, what we need to do for today is actually choose a plan. So we will be able to cover 3 of these areas. And it's up to you to actually collectively choose what our priorities should be for today. And I shared a link to a quick poll, oops, to allow us to pick this path. So there's a link in the chat. And I also have a QR code for those who are able to just use their smart devices to scan the QR code and share your responses.
Would you mind going back to the previous slide?
Sure, of
That gives a
course.
description. Thanks.
Huh. So we can talk about course design, we can talk about instruction, career readiness, assessment, or interaction. And I'm actually watching the results coming in live, which unfortunately I don't think I can share. Can I share? So we have 5 folks who have submitted their preferences. In the #1 spot, we have course design. So we're going to start with that. After that, we have interaction, and then we have assessment. Wonderful. Okay, so then that's going to be our plan for today. Oh, actually, that's changing because we have more results coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait another 30 seconds, and then that's going to be our final plan. Let's see if that changes. So right now, course design is still in the #1 spot. Okay, so course design, interaction, and assessment. Looks like these are the winners. So let's start with course design. And what I did here, I actually went to, this time I used Gemini. So I used different tools because I'm not sure what tools folks are familiar with. And of course, a lot of this also has to do with the tools that you're actually provided on your campus and the tools that you're also allowed to use for your work. So I know that some institutions are actually Google institutions. They use a lot of Google technology and they have institutional subscription to Google. The City University of New York subscribes to the Microsoft 365 suite. So for us, it's mostly Copilot. So you'll see references to different AI tools as we go through the content. So what I asked Gemini to do is to create, and this is just a snapshot of where to look at in the Oscar rubric to find different, and also Universal Design for Learning guidelines, to figure out some ways to tweak my course design so that I have, a much more comprehensive and a much more engaging course. So one of these things that that were listed earlier as one of the ways in which you can improve course design is through strengthening outcomes alignment. So these are the relevant standards from the Oscar rubric. And of course, they align nicely with these guidelines from Universal Design for Learning, so heighten salience of goals and objectives, optimize individual choice and autonomy. If I wanted to streamline the course structure, these would be the most relevant Oscar rubric standards, and they're also corresponding guidelines from UDL, and of course, for enhancing accessibility as well. And I think, as we are all probably aware, there is a Title II deadline that's coming up in April that strengthens a lot of these accessibility requirements. So this could be one of the ways in which you can choose to improve your course. So I started with learning outcomes, and what I did was I wanted to create a way to write better learning outcomes. And the way that I decided to do this is, and this is just an experiment. The way that I decided to do this is by using sort of an agent. I mean, it's not a true agent in the truest sense of the word because it's not fully autonomous, but it is very useful. So what I did was, and this is not just for me, this is to help faculty think through their learning outcomes to see if they already have learning outcomes for a course that they've already taught. They could uh, put them into the agent to see if maybe there is a better way of getting at that particular expectation from the students, if there's a better way to word it, if there's something that's missing, if there's a way to improve that outcome. And then step by step, you can build better outcomes and then go back and review the assessments. And once again, you could use AI to help you align these. So I am sharing with you a link to this agent so we can try it out. And in fact, as you're doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this screen because I also want to do it with you. And in fact, if anyone has a learning outcome that you want to test out this way, we can do that. So I'm going to switch screens and we're going to look at this agent together. And by the way, it might not work if you don't have a subscription to Gemini, even if you need at least a free subscription. So that's why we're gonna look at this together. So this is something that's called a Gemini gem. And the way that it works is basically you provide instructions to the tool, to the language model of what you wanted to look at, what you wanted to do, and how you wanted to do it. And there's, different ways in which you could specify the different pieces of the puzzle. So what I did was I said, well, look at the entirety of the Oscar rubrics, look at the entirety of Universal Design for Learning, all the tenets of Universal Design for Learning. Look at various iterations of Bloom's taxonomy, and based on that, give advice and suggestions for either improving a learning outcome or writing a new learning outcome. So it asked me if I want to get started. I'm going to say yes. So it gives me two paths. It actually will ask me if I want to create an outcome or an objective. And usually when we're in a very early planning of, for a course, we're just, sketching out the curriculum for the course, it makes sense to talk about learning objectives. If you are already running a course or you're preparing the course to actually release it, it makes sense to talk about learning outcomes. And I actually know that different institutions and different departments will have different preferences, which is why I decided to provide both. So I'm going to say one for learning outcomes. So what the tool will then ask the faculty member is for the course title, for the academic department, course subject matter and level, so graduate, undergraduate, introductory, advanced, what modality the course will be taught in, because that could be important for some learning outcomes, especially when it comes to ways in which students will demonstrate their learning, right? Because there are certain affordances, for example, that you have in-person, face-to-face, courses that you don't necessarily have in asynchronous courses. So that is a really important consideration for creating learning outcomes. It's going to ask them to provide learning goals or objectives, if there are any, for the department or for the program, or any required general learning outcomes that, I know some departments will have like a basic syllabus for a particular course, especially if it's an intro course. And then professors will have to use at least some of the learning outcomes that are already there and then build on them. It will also ask the faculty member whether they want to edit an existing learning outcome or create a new learning outcome. So does anyone have an interesting learning outcome that they would like to share? You could just drop it into chat and I'll grab it and I'll put it in just to see how this works. And by the way, you don't have to do anything this complex. By the way, if you want to do something this complex, I'll share my email at the end. And what I can do is actually give you this template so that you don't actually have to create an agent. All you are going to do is use this as your prompt, right? So you're going to supply all of the information and you're going to go to any AI tool that you want to use, whether it's Gemini or Copilot or whatever it is, and you're just going to copy and paste this very long prompt, and then you're going to continue working on your learning outcomes, one at a time until you're satisfied. Okay, we don't have any examples, or at least I don't see any examples here. So how about we come up with one? So let's say I'm going to talk about what I know, which is philosophy. So let's say that basic and I need a new so it's option B. And let's see what it comes up with. So it's going to ask me follow-up questions. First of all, it wants me to indicate what level in Bloom's taxonomy I want to focus on, right? And this is important because when we're building learning outcomes, it's important for us to identify at what level we want our students to perform when we're assessing them. So let's say that so evaluate argument parts. So it'll keep asking you, because it wants to continue to refine it. You don't necessarily have to go that route. So it gives you some ideas where you could start. So there's an analytical one, evaluative one, and a comprehensive one. So this one is analyze, evaluate, and this one is understand and apply. So this at least gives you, even if you don't want to use something that was generated by AI, this gives you a way to think about your learning outcomes, whether you already have learning outcomes that you're using, that you want to improve, or you want to create new ones. This gives you a way to think about it. And of course, if you had supplied, the course modality and, the kind of assessments you want to have, it will give you much, much better suggestions. But even these suggestions are a pretty good start. So this is one way in which we can go about improving our course design. So let's see, let's switch back to our slides. So another way that you can go about this is to, as I was saying, just talk to your AI tool, whatever that tool is. Say, hey, I'm working on this course. This is a learning outcome that I currently have. Can you recommend some ways to improve it? And you will provide certain things that you want the AI to consider as it's reviewing your learning outcomes. So do you want it to consider specific Oscar standards? Do you want it to consider accessibility? Do you want it to consider specific goals, learning goals that your department has specified? And you put all of that in, and it's going to also give you some pretty good suggestions. At least it's going to give you an idea of where to start. And a really great thing that you can do, you could just say, okay, here are my learning outcomes for this course. provide some course information and, different things that you want to incorporate, and say, produce two different versions of this, right, with strengthened learning outcomes. And it's just going to take all of your learning outcomes, it's going to analyze them, it's going to give you, a detailed explanation of, why it made certain suggestions, and it will give you maybe two versions of your learning outcomes. And working with AI, I'm sure many of you are familiar. You've worked with AI before, maybe not necessarily in course design, but on other things. The key to success, regardless of the tool that you use, is iteration, right? So it's an iterative process. It's a process of continuous refinement. So most of the time on your first try, you're not going to get really good results. So you go back and you keep tweaking things until you get what you want. And after a while, it becomes much, much easier to do. So the next thing that we can do to improve our course design is with alignment. So better alignment of our learning outcomes and whatever assessments we plan to have in the course. And what I have shared with you is a link to a document, and you can, take a look at it. And so this document will basically outline a kind of workflow that you can use to help you do this using AI. So it basically shows you how you could incorporate, whether it's Copilot or Gemini or Claude or whatever you use, into your process of aligning your outcomes and the assessments that you will have in the course. In fact, what we could do is take a quick look at it. So I'm also going to follow the link. Oops. And I will share. Okay. So it tells you to start by analyzing the learning outcomes. And actually one thing that you can do is, grab the text of this, or even, save it as a document, and you can actually add your learning outcomes directly into this, provide your own information, right? And actually use this as the workflow that you give to your AI tool. But at least it gives you a kind of a strategy of how you could include AI as part of this process, because not only will it get you to be a little bit more intentional about your course design and different ways in which you build a course, but it will also streamline a lot of this and will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, so that for you, the only thing that remains is to pick the best elements of what the AI has generated for you and include those elements into your course. So I think the next one that was identified was interactions. So I think we have instruction here. Okay, interaction. So one of the ways in which I found it really gets students to engage with each other and with course material is by using AI-mediated collaboration. So there are different ways in which you could create activities which are interactive or even collaborative, but that happen in an AI-mediated environment. In fact, there are 3 different tools that we have at our disposal. We have Perplexity Spaces. Have folks ever used Perplexity before? Do we have any Perplexity users? No. So there's something called Claude projects. I know a lot of faculty do use Claude, and So I think Perplexity is actually giving a pro subscription to all educational users. So if you make an account with Perplexity using your college email, you will get access to Perplexity and all of these tools, including Perplexity Spaces, for free for 1 year. And after that, they might continue it, or there might be a nominal fee. But at the very least, you'll be able to see how you could structure these spaces. And this could even be something that you might advocate to your technology departments, to your deans, that hey, this really works, this really gets the students going. And it's also a novel way for students to interact with each other and with course content. And it also teaches them AI literacy, which is really important because it's part of those core career readiness skills that they're going to need. So how would this work? And what is it? So the idea here is that this is an enhanced virtual space for students to interact. It's both private and secure. So there's different ways to get students into that space. You could provide a link, or you could manually enroll them. So different platforms will use different methods. But the idea is that you now have this private space. Now, in that private space, you could provide content. And that content could be, course readings, it could be your lecture notes, whatever you want. And then you build a guide and provide specs, right? So basically, you're building out some kind of a project or some kind of an activity, some kind of an assignment that takes place, or at least a part of it takes place in this environment. And you could build or scaffold interaction into this assignment where you're not just requiring students to interact with each other in some way, but you're also requiring them to interact with the AI that is part of the space and with each other via this tool, via AI, right? So just to give you an example, what I did was I created, it's a writing assignment. And the first phase of this writing assignment had to do with going through and understanding the sources, understanding the different arguments in the sources, and kind of delving deeper and deeper to see the connections between the different ideas, different arguments, but to also build on the understanding of their peers. So I created a notebook LM. I fed the 5 readings that we had for, so the readings were required. They had to read these sources. And they had to use, I believe, at least 2 of those readings for their paper at the end of the process. So they were first required to go through the readings on their own. Then they were given a quick tutorial on how to use Notebook LM and what to do for this part of the assignment. The readings were fed into this space. So the readings were there. And what they were required to do was to interact with the readings via the AI, ask probing questions about the readings. And if they get a really good response, they would save it as a note for other students to review. So at the end of this, they were interacting not just with the original sources, the 5 readings, they were also interacting with this whole knowledge base that they created through these nodes by asking, ever more interesting and probing questions about the content, about the connection of the content, in the different readings. And at the end of it all, these students, and there was, I think, 25 or 26 students altogether, they produced over 100 pages of notes. Now, it's true, there was some overlap in some of these notes, but most of it was pretty interesting and novel and unique. And what's even more interesting is that at the end of it all, after they had to start working independently on their papers, what I saw in a lot of the papers was the students were not only referencing the required readings, they were also referencing some of the ideas they saw in each other's notes. So there was this conversation that was happening both in this, AI mediated interactive space and in their individual work as well, where they were building on each other's ideas, responding to each other's arguments. And, this was really beautiful to see. So they also had a reflective piece where they had to talk about how interacting with each other and with the content this way differed from, all the different ways that they're used to interacting with their peers or with course materials. And there were some, mixed responses, but it was different and it got them engaged. And I feel that because of this and because they wanted to try it out, it got them to engage with the material even more. And they also produced so much writing. I don't think they've ever, most of them have ever written this much in a course before, because literally, like over 100 pages were produced by these students just in, in this space itself. So one thing that you can do, you can use a tool like Gemini or a tool like Copilot to help you think through something like this. So let's say you want to use one of these spaces like Notebook LM. Where do you start? How do you plan this activity? So you can also incorporate an LLM into this brainstorming process where you tell it the course, the assignment or the activity, what is the goal of this activity, and how you envision students interacting with each other, right? In terms of your expectations for that interaction. And AI, whichever AI tool you use, will help you to think through this activity. It will write instructions for you. It will write, instructions for students, and it will even you could even use AI to create, and I have it here, but I don't want to play it right now, but there's an audio assignment brief, so it could produce an audio assignment brief. It could create a, quick slideshow for you that you can share with students that basically explains how you expect them to interact with each other and with the content and what the point of the activity is. So there are a lot of different ways in which you can use AI as part of the process of building an interactive activity that also uses AI. So there is no rule that says that you can't use one AI to work with another AI. In fact, this kind of layering will actually get you to the results you desire much, much faster. So one of the links I want to share with you, if you are unable to use the QR code, I'm going to pop it right into our chat, is something that I produced as a kind of outline for an activity. And we can look at it together as well. So the idea that I had was something that is a course navigator challenge, which is a scavenger hunt. And this was built with AI, and it incorporates certain NACE competencies. Where am I? It emphasizes interaction, talks about grading, skill mastery, right? So you have an outline for a comprehensive interactive assignment. And to produce this took me, I don't want to lie, maybe 5 minutes. And this has gone through several iterations, right? So I started out with not having much of an idea. just said, hey, I want something interactive and I want it to be a challenge and I want it to be in the form of a scavenger hunt. And I gave some information about my course. And I think this was maybe 2 or 3 iterations and it produced this for me. So when I say that a lot of this is low effort, it really is low effort. It's just, the more efficient you are in creating good prompts, right? And going back and refining those prompts, the faster and easier it will be for you to use something like this to improve your course and to include, interesting, engaging, interactive components that students will actually want to participate in, right? And it surely beats just telling them to go to the discussion board and, start a thread and then respond to somebody else's thread, right? So it really gets them to engage with each other, with different platforms that you might be using, with the course material. And it really does teach them a variety of different skills that perhaps going to the discussion board does not. So the next one, what was the next one? I think that was assessment, if I'm not mistaken, right? Let me check. The next one that folks wanted to talk about, yes, assessment. Okay. So assessment. Once again, you could start by talking to your AI tool that you prefer or the one that you have via your institution. For me, it's Copilot, so I talk to Copilot. And what I wanted Copilot to do is to create a comprehensive assessment plan. So I gave it information about the course, as much information as I had. And actually, in this instance, you can even provide your current syllabus. And then tell it specifically that you want to create an assessment plan that emphasizes certain things, right? And that could be better alignment with the learning outcomes or learning objectives that are already in the syllabus. So let's say you're very happy with your learning outcomes and objectives, but now you want a better way to assess student learning. So one of the things that you can do is you can drop all that information into Copilot or Gemini, Claude, and tell it to give you an assessment plan, or an example of an assessment plan that would emphasize certain things, maybe give you different ways of measuring some of the same skills or achievements. Maybe you are going from one modality to the other, right? So maybe you're going from teaching a course in person to now teaching it asynchronously, which all of us know is a very different animal. So how would you modify some of the assignments that may have worked very well in an in-person course to also offer the same rigor, but also the same variety of assessments for your students who are now going to be in an asynchronous course? And you can go through several iterations, and at the end of it, you might actually get an assessment plan that would create a much better, much more comprehensive course for you, where the where you're offering your students a variety of different ways of demonstrating their learning, and you're offering scaffolded activities and assignments, and you are also providing just the holy grail, right? That regular and continuous assessment throughout the semester, right? Throughout the duration of the course. So let me share the link to this. And once again, this was produced in less than 10 minutes. And let's also take a look at it together. So this is a recommended assessment plan. It was a course on, it was a graduate course on intermediate microeconomics. And this is the assessment plan that was recommended. And according to the faculty member who provided me with information, this is pretty good. Did she use all of these suggestions? No, of course not. But this was food for thought. And actually, in terms of weekly learning activities, she changed the way that she was doing her discussion boards because this is something that she liked. She wanted to make it more engaging and more interesting, and she also wanted to reduce the possibility of cheating and plagiarism with AI. So this very first one, weekly learning activities, she continued working with Copilot on her own to try to refine these activities so that they're still engaging. Students are able to, engage with each other and discuss content, but also in a way that would be very difficult for them to plagiarize using AI. And she came up with some really interesting ideas for her discussion board activities. So this is a really good way to start. You don't have to use everything that the tool recommends. In fact, you could have it produce 3, 4, 5 different assessment plans. And at the end of it, the assessment plan you go with could be some amalgam of all of them or some of them. But you could compare really good suggestions rather than, in like, let's say a space of 15, 20 minutes, rather than spending hours to come up with just one assessment plan to consider, right? So it really does streamline, our work, and it really does help us to work at a slightly higher level, right? Because now, rather than like sitting there and typing these things up, you're actually doing the work that you should be doing, right? Improving your courses, making your courses better, using your subject matter expertise to create those better courses. So when AI can step in and, do all the menial labor for you of putting things together, it becomes much easier for you to actually say, you know what, I can improve this class. You know what, I don't need a week, to change my learning outcomes and align them better with my assessments. Maybe it'll only take me a weekend, maybe it'll only take me one day, right? Because now you have this magic wand that you can use to create, assessments that really work better for the modality in which you're teaching, for the learning outcomes that you're using, and, for the kind of skills that you want students to actually be able to master and, to demonstrate mastery. Let's see. I am very, very short on time. So I think this would be a really good time to pause for any questions. I know I dumped a lot of content on you, but hopefully this was helpful. And I'm just going to turn it over to you for questions.
I hope they're ready for the quiz.
So I also shared my contact information if you have any questions about any of the artifacts I shared today, or any of the, ways in which you could, maybe use a template so that you don't have to rewrite the prompt every time. I'd be more than happy to help you with that as well.
Yes, that was excellent, Maria. Thank you. Really, some good things that we can try ourselves.